Religious leaders have a very key role to play in the sense that they must encourage their followers to abide by the principles of peace, and love, and to avoid harming women and girls. So a lot of responsibility is also on them, the traditional and religious leaders, the law and policy makers, and also the carers and the parents of young girls. So this is at the domestic wing of the International Airport in Niger. There's information about what you need to do. Great initiative. Hashtag I day with her. Yes, welcome everyone to the show today. As you see, I was just a reporter again on the street sometime last week because I had chance. I went to Abuja, and as I landed waiting for my Abuja in Nigeria, waiting for my luggage, I was so pleased to see that little poster at the bottom that showed how you can seek help if there's a case of abuse. And this was a very busy airport, and it just made me very pleased and happy with what Spotlight Initiative is doing, because they're also giving people the opportunity to watch and learn from the series that we've been working on. We're on the 9th edition. We've heard all kinds of gory stories about violence, sexual and physical. Physical violence was what we focused on last week, when we were talking about the fact that sometimes parents could go overboard in trying to correct their children, following the typical spoil the child if you spare the rod and things like that. And we realized that most parents today, in fact, the statistic that we quoted last week gives one cause for concern. However, I am not bothered, because with these series, hopefully, perspectives will change. And I'm with people who work in this particular area, especially my guest, Dr. Esohe Aghatise, who is calling in from the UK. She lives, she says, good evening. She lives to change lives by changing perspectives and changing laws. But I would like to quickly read her bio, just for the benefit of those that do not know. I know if you Googled her, you probably find something. Dr. Esohe is a jurist. She's a feminist. That word, a lot of people don't like it. She's an activist and a United Nations expert on trafficking, and is the founder and executive director of Associazione Iroko Onlus. That's an Italian name, which provides services to victims of sexual violence and trafficking in Italy. She was, until November 2020, the chief of party and team leader of the UK aid-funded Stamping Out Slavery in Nigeria, SOTIN, the program that ran for a few years in Nigeria. Esohe has received several awards for her work, including being honored in 2007 by the US State Department as a hero in the fight against modern-day slavery, and produced a short film on trafficking entitled Journey of No Return, which is being distributed in different parts of the world as a preventive measure against trafficking. You'd wonder, what has trafficking got to do with abuse? We're going to be speaking to the issue of how culture and law can change that, and religion. So thank you very much, Esohe, and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I have also...
Thank you for inviting me.
Jamilu Hanya. Yes, Mr. Hanya, and the little I know about the language, Hanya means road. And I asked you before we started, what does Jamilu mean? And you said Jamilu means something good. Through your work at the Referral Center in Niger State, in Minna, you are the head of the medical team and nurses who work for response to people who have been abused. So you're like the first contact for people who come to report at the center. It is a pleasure to have you on board. Welcome, Mr. Hanya. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you
I
very much.
appreciate your presence here. So I want to start from the lady, if you don't mind. I'm wondering, Dr. Esohe, how did you end up in this field of working with girls who have been trafficked? And I want you to draw a correlation between that and abuse. I don't know what your research has shown in this area.
Well, thank you very much. I ended up in this area of work when I went to Italy for my postgraduate studies. And while there, met a lot of Nigerian women being trafficked into Italy, into sexual exploitation. And working with government agencies there with time, I also felt the need to do something more than just working with government agencies. And that's how I came to set up the Iroko charity, Associazione Iroko. But one thing that I noticed in my work with these women is that starting out, because you see, some of them are aware when they are trafficked into Europe that they are being trafficked into prostitution. Some of them are not aware. But even for those who are aware, they really don't know what it involves. So when they come, what you find out that a lot of them, to a large extent, have already suffered some form of sexual violence even before they left home. You find that they had already been groomed as children to believe that the only way that they can earn money, the only way that they can be of use to themselves and to their families and society is to sell their bodies, to use their bodies. So there is this image of self that is not developed. There is this image of self as an instrument to be used because they have already been groomed to believe that. And there's this acceptance from a lot of the women of sexual and physical violence as something quote and unquote normal. It's been normalized to them. So that's the way the culture grooms them to believe that it's okay for them to be, to be sexually violated, to be beaten, no matter how difficult it is, no matter how painful, no matter how horrendous. They are women, the myth is because you are a woman, you must accept this. Yeah, so that's how violence is really, really closely linked up with trafficking.
Okay, I'm just going to have to. Jamilu is calling from Mina in Niger State, and we may be having some connectivity problems as we go along. But I thank you for coming. You did hear what Dr. Esohe has just said. I would appeal that when you're not speaking, Jamilu, just mute your end and turn down the volume on your screen as you speak. Is that okay?
Okay.
Okay. So now we heard Dr. Esohe say something about most of the girls. She found out that most of the girls trafficked to Europe were girls who had begun to see sexual violence and any violence against them as a way of life because it's their culture. That's the way it is. It's the way they're viewed, and they didn't see anything wrong with it. They ended up being, prostitution was just one next step. I'm wondering what your experience has been with the kind of people who come eventually to report these cases in your referral center. Can you share some light on that?
Thank you so much. The thing is, it's actually difficult to separate this to religion and culture, most especially when it comes to issues of gender-based violence. The fact is, the definition of a minor may be somehow distorted or blurred when it comes to, like, for instance, you'll find out like a minor taking a role of an adult, most especially when it comes to issues of marriage. When it comes to issues of marriage, like for instance, you find out a 15-year-old girl coming in to say, I want to marry, I want to get married. This has been an issue. According to religion down here, a girl of 14, a girl of 16, however you can look at it, can actually come up and say, I want to get married, and they can feel like giving her out for marriage, which is okay. But when you come to the law and look at it from the law perspective, you find out that this girl is not at the age of consent. So sometimes this whole issue is somehow difficult for perpetrators of sexual violence, most especially rape, to understand. Sometimes there is this shared ignorance. Okay, if I can take in a girl who is a minor as a wife, I can actually have carnal knowledge of this girl and feel she has given me consent. So sometimes we find it difficult even differentiating the two. Like I was sharing with Lola yesterday, I was telling her, when it comes to festive periods like this, you will find out that the numbers will drop. Festive period, this cut across Xmas, Salah, Easter, all that.
What do you mean by the numbers will
usually drop?
What numbers drop?
The number of cases, the number of these cases of gender-based violence, the number of, to be precise, number of rape cases that are being reported to the center drops during this period.
Why so?
Period of Easter, Xmas. That is the question. That's the issue. Now, this has to do with, based on our understanding, it has to do with religion. At this festive period, you will find out that most of the perpetrators of these acts are actually people that are coming into the city. Some of them, you see them maybe riding Okada. Some of them will be doing one thing or the other to make the both ends meet. So you will find out that with this number of people coming into the town, the number of these cases will rise. But when it is this during this festive period, most of them, like the Christians, will tend to, the Muslims will tend to go back to their places, to their villages and all that. So you find out that the numbers have dropped that drastically. Okay, take for instance, during February, month of February, we had about 17 cases of rape in particular reported to the center. And now coming down to the month of March, we're having 6. Month of April, we're having 4 cases. Month of now 7 cases. So this cut across, this has to do with how religion affects. I don't know how we are going to view this, but during this festive period, we tend to have number of people that drops. Okay, and then now when it comes to issues of culture and religion, like I said, it's actually difficult to separate the two. Down here, you look at a girl, you.
Okay, I'm sorry, if you have not finished, go ahead.
Like when it comes to issue of culture, you look at it like the way of life of people here down north is that a girl can actually get married when she gets to the age at which she's getting married, not considering whether she's up to the age of consent or not.
Okay, I get what you're saying. We said that before. I want to come back to you, Dr. Esohe. I want to come, if you don't mind, let me just go back to Dr. Esohe for a little bit, because she's done a lot of research in this area about culture and religion. And I also find it interesting that culture, are we saying culture is bad, or is just the way culture has not evolved well enough around here, Dr. Esohe?
I think we have to look at this from the basis of our societies. We live in patriarchal societies. Most of our societies are patriarchal, where the man is considered head of the family and women the women are supposed to defer to the men. They should obey the men. I mean, our traditional culture says that. The imported Christian culture says that. I am from the South, where Christianity is the overwhelming thing, where you have this idea of the man being the head and the woman having to be submissive to the husbands. I just want to touch a little bit on what my colleague
Jamilu.
said earlier. Jamila said, I'm not so sure that I really don't know about the cases in your area, but from some of the studies we did, we find that cases of sexual violence, it's not so much people from outside the society, unknown people. It's actually within the societies. A greater majority, over 75–80% of those who are perpetrators of sexual violence are known in one way or the other to the victim. It's either they are even family members or friends of friends, but they are known to the victims in the greater majority of cases. So I don't know why you have this incidence of during religious periods, you have less cases. But we also have to remember that there is that stigma that is, attached to the question of sexual violence and the culture of silence that women are groomed to live in. You must not speak, you must not say, especially if it's a family member, a close family member. You want to destroy the family, you mustn't talk about it. If it's someone that's known, for instance, right now we're dealing with the case of a pastor who's been violating some children in his church, and people are going right, left,
In what part of
center
the country? In what
in
part of the
Edo
country?
State, and people are going right, left, center and saying, don't talk about it. You're not allowed to talk about it. The culture of silence that women are groomed in is part of what leads to that lack of enough statistics, because you find out that it's usually the tip of the iceberg that you get to see. So coming back to the question of religion and culture, religion is a part of culture. Okay, so the question is, women are groomed to believe that they are subservient, they're in a subservient position, while men are groomed to believe they are the head of the family. The masculine idea that for you to be considered as a real man, you must be strong, you must not cry, you must act in a certain way, which translates into a certain kind of violence, in which some men, feel that they are justified in using violence to respond to any kind of frustration they may feel within the family. And the wife is expected to accept it, to be accepting. Because the first question that she is asked is, what did you do that he beat you? How did you behave? What did you say to him? Did you cook enough food? Were you a good wife? Or if it's a daughter, how did you behave? Did you speak rudely to your brother? So you see, these are the issues I believe that we are talking about. The way our culture and our religion tends to present that double tier of power, in which the men are those who are in charge, the women are those who must be subservient and who must accept a certain kind of what I would call second level citizenship. So these are the issues in my view.
Well, while I appreciate what you're saying, I get to feel the sense that, are we saying that having one head in a relationship is negative because the religion and culture puts the men ahead, so that is bad? And there's some positive aspects to that. Before you respond, I want Mr. Jamilu to take a look at, this is a man, right? What's your opinion about this? Because I remember there's some good things about our culture. There should be. I remember seeing something recently on social media about the fantastic thing. You think Japanese, you think respect. But when they say think Nigeria, the word that comes out most is you think patriarchy. How did we get there? And is patriarchy so bad, or there are some aspects of it that we can take and make better use of? I'm asking. I don't know.
Um, Thank you very much. I think being the head in any kind of relationship, whether in the household or in any relationship, I don't think it's a problem. Now, if you look at yourself as the head of the house, you should also think that as a head, there is something that is holding the head. There is something that is holding you up there, which is the neck. And I believe that's where the woman comes in. If the woman if the woman fails to hold the head, I think there is no how you as the head can stand. Now, it's just a thing that you always come to a compromise whenever you are into a relationship, because that's where mostly we get it wrong. Now, coming down to our culture and looking at where we come from, Africa, as we said, the man is always assumed to be the head, and as the head, he can do and undo. That's what we always think. But you should always think that as a head, you have a responsibility. It's not just by looking down on women and doing things and all that. Like she pointed out, the issue of silence. That's where in most of our societies, let me even say down here, the North, I always say it, one of our problems is that we always advocate against women. We say that a woman is not allowed to say anything. A woman is not allowed to speak in a particular gathering. A woman is not allowed to say anything, whatever thing she's passing through. As long as she's married to that man, as long as she's supposed to be submissive all the time. In fact, this is one of the issues, and that's what is going down to even our children. That even brings this issue of silence. That a woman can be molested, she doesn't have any right to speak out, because it sounds to be as an abomination. That is how we look at it, cultural wise. You can imagine even the cases I told you we have, like from when we started 2014 till now. 2014 we had about 14 cases. 2015 we had about 60 cases. 2017 we had about 70 something cases. And coming down to 2020, we're having 145 cases of rape throughout the year. Now, one of the major issues here, we always advocate and we always say it, women should speak. Women should speak out, because that is one of the major issues. It's not a problem you being the head of the house. They should understand that you have a responsibility.
You need to let us know. You run the Referral Center in Minna. It's 6-7 years old now. In all of that time, how many of the cases have you guys successfully prosecuted to the end? Clear the number of cases are rising because you exist and people can speak. But how many have you successfully prosecuted? Before I go back to Dr. Esohe.
All our cases have been prosecuted. Now, the problem mostly successfully, though we used to have certain problems, now like economic issues. Sometimes you get to the court, you will like the victims and the victim's family sometimes. Like, take for instance, if a case is reported to the police station, that same case from the police station, they come down to SAC. From SAC, we refer back to the police. We write medical report, which can be taken to court, and we go and give evidences. Now, most of these cases of rape in particular, or gender-based violence, affect the low economic status, people that are of low economic status. People that cannot afford even transport, than the rich, down here, than the rich. So you will find out that the family cannot even afford a transport. You ask somebody you cannot examine nobody. The person has to come down. Who will bring them down? They will complain they don't have money to transport themselves down to the SAC. Sometimes, you need them to... Shall I go on?
Yes, please.
So that's one of the issues. They come down. Sometimes you want them to appear in the court, because at a point, even though most of the time, from the victim's side, you don't need to be at the court. You don't need to be at the court. But at a point where they are needed, like take for instance in the state CID, because most of the cases are being sent to the state CID, which they prosecute most of all these cases. You ask the victim to come and give his or her statement. They always tell you they don't have money. They will tell you they don't even have money to transport themselves to that place. So you will find out.
Clearly, there are some problems with prosecution, but you're carrying ahead to prosecute. So, and in your area, it seems to be more a problem with the lower class. I suppose those are the ones that report. I'm sure Dr. Esohe will have a comment on that because they are prosecuting a case currently in Edo State. But as she says that, I want you to also respond to his comment about it's the perception of the headship role in families that's causing the challenge. If, for example, the head realizes that the neck is just as important, then there will be an issue. What do you think about that before you talk about the infrastructural problem?
I want to speak to the question of, the question you asked about whether there's anything that we can think of as good in patriarchy.
Absolutely.
And I'm struggling really hard to find something good about patriarchy, but unhappily I can't. Because this is a social system that is put there that invokes male dominance over women on social, political, economic, on all levels.
For no reason.
Okay, so for no reason apart from a question of the sex that you're born into. So we have a seemingly rigid situation. I'm thinking of the legal profession, for instance, where there was the myth that for you to be considered intelligent enough to be a lawyer, you have to turn yourself into some kind of false male. And so the so-called gentlemen in skirts, the most ridiculous and senseless kind of belief. But this goes to underline that teaching of patriarchy, that imposition of patriarchy. And it's not just a question of words. When you think of it and you're in a relationship, you're in a marriage where you're told that the head is the male, you as the female, it doesn't matter what your level is, you must be subservient and submissive. That's the word that is most loved by those who advocate for this. You must be submissive. Okay, you tell a young woman from childhood, as she's growing up as a woman, you have to be submissive to the head. Meanwhile, her brother, the male in the family, is being told, you are male, so you have to be the head of the family. And you have to learn to take care of the family. And then at a certain stage, you expect these two young people, male and female, to be able to consider themselves as equal and treat themselves with mutual respect. How can that be? If one of them is supposed to be the head, the person who is in charge. So for me, it's not a question. For me, it should be a question of equal rights, equal treatment, equal opportunities. That is what I see.
Partnership.
A partnership, an equal partnership. But this is not to say that they are both doing the same things. No. Because people tend to confuse things and say, okay, are you saying if I'm digging, if I'm cutting wood, the woman should also cut wood? No, that is not what equal partnership means. It means being able to, there are some people who like to wash plates. There are some who like to cook. You know, it could be male or female. But under a patriarchal system, the wife is expected to cook. If she does not cook, it's a big problem. But that is not to say that the man is going to be there to cut the wood for her to make fire to cook. But the question is not really patriarchy in itself, of itself. It's also the question of the way this is interpreted in society. The question of that power, the economic power, the opportunities that are given to women, the opportunities that are allowed to women. In Nigeria, you have cases of little girls being married off to old men, you know, because they are female. And we know the devastating result of that. And there's a World Bank, there are several World Bank studies that says that when you deny women that equality of opportunity, that society is the loser. As a society, we lose. Yes, so we lose out from the intelligence, from the contribution to the economy, from the contribution to the society as a whole, we are losers. When we do not give that equal opportunity to women in the society.
I would like
yeah.
I would like you to take a break there. I want to take a break and hear what people think about gender-based violence, rape in particular. And I'm wondering, as we come back, I want you to be able to draw a correlation between that and these thoughts of patriarchy and how culture and religion is making it happen more. So I'll take a short break. Let's go to the streets for the first time on this show and hear what people have to say.
It's a very bad situation that anyone can be in. They mostly blame the victim that is going through. So, and it's a very hard time for that person. So they blame the victim. They either ask the person questions like, why, what were you wearing?
Sometimes it's even due to jealousy. The woman is doing better at her business or at her job, and then the man becomes jealous. Every little reason, he beats her. Every few reasons, beats her. It's not good. It should be condemned.
Yes, we spoke with Dr. Esohe last. I think I should get Jamilu to respond to this if I come back to Dr. Esohe. Dr. Esohe, I'm coming back to you and to respond to that. Jamilu, what's Kare Lafia? What's Kare Lafia? Can you translate that for us?
What's that?
The last line on that song, Kare Lafia, something like that. I'm not sure. You didn't listen. Lafia is peace or something. What is Lafia?
Yes, Lafia is peace. Lafia
okay,
is just kind of health. Healthy living.
Healthy living, to be wellness. So you saw the video you heard what the issues Dr. Esohe raised. Very valid issues. He says people like her are not advocating that there should be no roles and responsibilities within families. What they're saying is that the question, patriarchy, puts one sex over the other, one gender over the other, and therefore it's encouraging disparity rather than partnership. What do you think about that? And you see the people on the streets, the two issues that were raised. One, if a woman has experienced any violence, especially if it's sexual, they ask questions like, oh, what were you wearing? Where were you at? Right? And then the other man says, the question is, sometimes men are jealous of women, of their progress, and so they lash out. What do you think about it?
Thank you very much. Where we tend to lose everything is from the beginning of the whole thing. Like she said, when it comes to family, where you have a boy and a girl, and you decide to put the boy ahead of the girl, most of the families, that's what we do, and that's our culture, and nobody can change it, and that is how it is. You look at a boy and say, no, why are you behaving like that? You are a man. Why are you behaving? Even if the man happens to be the most junior, the woman doesn't have any right to correct him. Why? Because he's a man. And when it comes to house chores and all that, I think that's where we get everything. That's where we are not getting it right. Give them equal opportunities. Let them understand that even as a man, I should be able to do this. Even as a woman, I should be able to do this. Take, for instance, I'm giving myself as an example. I grew up in a family where I'm born with among girls, and I am being made to understand that I'm the man. So as a man, I don't need to wash plates. I don't need to sweep. I don't need to go to market. All I need to do is to give money to the woman, let her go to the market. When it comes to sweeping the house or cleaning the house, let the women in the house do the work. Let them do everything. That is how I'll grow up, and that's how I look at myself. And that is why you see a man coming into the house, a woman who has been working from morning till night, probably doing something, has to come down like, okay, from another culture, woman and a man will go to farm together. Down here in the north, they will go to farm together, but the woman has to come back and cook. And if the woman complains that she's tired of coming back from the farm and still cook, then the man will beat her up. And she doesn't have any right to go and complain to anybody.
How do we stop things like that? I think we should address that.
Okay, how we have to stop something like, it's just something that we still have to approach it through religion and culture. Let's change the way we live. Let's preach it out there. And that is what we are expected to do. So many people, why they do that is because of ignorance. It's because they don't know that as a man, I can cook. As a man, I should be able to sweep the house. As a man, I should be able to take care of my wife. They believe as a man, I should be worshipped. So it's just a kind of orientation we need right from the beginning in our schools, in our homes. In fact, in our social gatherings, let's preach this. Let's be able to advocate this. I think that's the only way we can get out of this. That's some of the ways we can get out of it.
I can see Dr. Esohe already shifting her seat. Is it just preaching it or living it? So, because when we preach it and we don't live it, we can say one thing and do another. And that may be one of the problems that we have. And again, most people are scared, are worried. Custodians of culture, one of the traditional worries would be, why are you turning things over on its head? Our society is in trouble today. That's why you have most of all this female empowerment and activists like Dr. Esohe. They're making women's head blow, and they're doing things the other way around. You are finding more families breaking up. There's question of divorce and all of that. So how would you respond to the change that we need, and how we should have a change that will be more sustainable?
Thank you very much. The question of divorces and families breaking up, it's not really that of being asking for equal rights. It's that of we are reaching that level where women are no longer willing to just accept the status quo the way it is. Let things being the way it is. Women are able to go to school. They go to school. You find two teachers, husband and wife. They come back. The man sits down, expects his wife to take care of the kids, go into the kitchen to cook, and they both came back from the same job. So from the moment that women are now also contributing in that way, they are no longer willing to sustain that status quo.
Or no longer able. Is it beyond? Is it just willing, or they're no longer able to?
They are not willing, and they are not able to, because it's humanly difficult, if not impossible, to sustain that kind of triple jobs, outside and at home, as a worker, as a mother, and as a wife. But outside of that, there's also the question of, the kind of messages that we still continue to give to our young people, the kind of contrasting messages we still continue to teach them. We still continue to teach in church. You're hearing pastors telling their congregations that wives, you have to be submissive to your husbands. Husbands, be the head of the family. And then at the same time, we are saying to these same young women, you know what? You need to speak up. If something happens to you, if someone, treats you in a violent manner, speak up. Talk about what is happening to you. But in the background, she's being told to keep quiet. Shut up, don't say anything. We have this contrasting message. Then, to the boys, we are saying, well, you are the man. You have to be firm. You have to respond properly. If you give her a slap or two, that is not violence. That is just a way of making her understand who's the head of the family. But a slap or two is the beginning of what grows into that bigger violence. Of course, it's not all men who succumb to that. We know that. But the question is also that of changing the narrative. Instead of asking women to speak up, why don't we train the men not to be violent? Why don't we train them that it is toxic masculinity to be violent? Why don't we teach them to say, okay, I will not treat my females like that. I will not be violent. I will not be abusive. I will not regard them as less than human. Because for you to treat people in a certain manner, to be so violent, to treat them, you need to dehumanize them. So when you reduce them to less than that level, the respect is less, the feeling of them as humans is less, and so it is easier to violate them because they are not exactly human, are they? They are sub. I mean, I told the young guy, I told the young guy when I said, look, we're having a conference on violence against women. He laughed and said, oh, well, women, no, I won't go to that kind of thing. What do they do? Women, all women do is to, go to parties, enjoy themselves. Women don't have time for those kind of serious discussions, he said. I looked at him and said, but I'm a woman. And I am the one, I'm part of that group organizing it. But he didn't have an answer because he's been trained to believe that women don't have the brains, the heads for anything serious. So he dehumanizes us. We do not have that intelligence to be able to think abstractly. That was what was at the origins of not allowing women to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. Even now, there are families that will not allow their female children to go into certain professions because that is not for women. So what I think when we come to the question of violence, and the question may be, what has all this got to do with violence? Absolutely. It has everything to do with violence because it is when you reduce someone to that level of being that minimum less than human that you're able to treat the person in that way, to be violent, to violate the person, to insult the person, to treat the person as less than human. So that is what feeds into it. So my belief is that the training should be turned to train our men not to violate, to train our men to look at women folk as equal with them, and not the one of a man coming home and saying, okay, I will help you with the housework. No, you're not helping me. You're doing your share of the housework. It's different. So there's also that question of language, but we won't go into all that now. So
no, but we're going to have time to talk about that. I mean, clearly you say change can only come when we begin to see women as equals, not necessarily having the same roles, but we have equal dignity and therefore treat that way. But the patriarchy is not encouraging that. I wonder if Jamilu thinks the same way.
I think it's a good one. That the angle at which I'm also looking at it is not only training the male ones, we actually go a long way. And another thing that I'm thinking is these women, let them please be empowered. Let there be women empowerment programs here and there so that at least, because some of the issues we are having down here is that you see a lady who is into marriage facing a lot of challenges in her home, being beaten all the time. And when you ask her, madam, are you still, how do you feel about this marriage? How do you feel about this relationship? She will tell you, this man is just that he's a good man because he gives me food to eat, he gives me money to buy my clothing and all that. But the only problem he has is that beating. You can imagine this. The only problem he has is just that beating. And some of them are even willing to get out of that relationship because they are threatened, their life is in danger. But they don't have the empowerment. Some of them don't have the empowerment. They can't just get out. Some of them barely feed. You can imagine when you come out, they call you Bazaura. Not every man can come for you, and you have children that you need to feed by the time you go out of that marriage. So you feel, I don't have anything. Is the man doing everything? Is the man bringing the food? Is the man doing this? Is the man doing that? This down part of the country, that is how it is. And then she's been molested, she's beaten all the time, and she cannot say anything. Why? Because if she leaves, you can't even encourage her to leave because you can't feed her. But in a situation where she's empowered, at least there is a way she can even talk to the husband. She'll be able to talk to the husband, and the husband will listen to her. I don't know. That I think that is another approach that we can resolve this. That we can make this thing, that we can minimize this, or that we can stop this whole thing.
Okay, I hear you.
Let's find some.
I hear you, Mr. Hanya. You're saying that while it is very good to train the boy child or men to understand and see women with a different eyes, it's also important to empower the women themselves, to make sure that they are able to be financially independent. And I'm sure Dr. Esohe agrees with that, because she mentioned the question earlier about, because there are many more women who are empowered now and a little more independent, they are not accepting a lot of this standard patriarchal cultural things that hold them back. And so families are not, there's more breakage in marriages. So what do you think about this perspective that is done? But before I do that, I realize before you guys respond, Dr. Esohe, I realize I've not even played any videos or pictures about your work. Let me quickly do that. I'll just play back to back. Maybe I play Dr. Esohe's own, and then, or maybe very quickly, let's just see your work, because I've just been talking to heads. So let's go for it. Just a minute. That's you on the streets trying to get people to support the work against trafficking. I mean, before we come into this, you've already drawn the correlation between sexual abuse and trafficking, but you never really did give me the statistics. Would you say 90% of most of the girls who are trafficked, or 70% or 50 or 10% have suffered some form of violence or the other?
I would say that about a minimum of 97%. Yes, almost all of them. Almost all of them. And when they describe some of the violence that they've suffered, both before they started out and were trafficked, but especially during the process of being trafficked, the rape, the sexual violence, the beatings, all kinds of the most horrible. And then in the process of being exploited, sexually exploited in Europe, it's all one story of violence after the other. I mean, young women who've had their skin ironed, the iron you use for clothes? It's been used on somebody's skin to make her to, go into prostitution. A young girl who was raped so badly, they had to take out her insides. I mean, stories like that, they are common. That is part of the everyday, the kind of experiences they bring to you. So, and that violence is at the hands of whom? It's at the hands of, again, over 97% men. It's not the women who, violate the other women. It's men who violate women. So this is the question we're talking about. And the issue is that, yes, it is extremely important that we empower women. And what is empowerment? We are talking of education. We are talking of equal opportunities to employment. We are talking of setting up systems that provide that dignified life, the possibility that allows these women to have the possibility to earn a dignified living, not just earning money, some amount of money that is not enough to die on, but not enough to live on, but enough money for them to have a dignified life. That is what we're talking about. So when we're using the word, I hesitate a little in using that word empowerment, because it's been so used to mean all and
Giving
nothing.
stipends.
When government is not investing money in women's affairs. I mean, look at Nigeria, for instance. How many women do we have in parliament? This is what we are talking about. When we talk of empowerment, I want to see a minimum of 40%, if not 50% of women in parliament. But then you have some of these members of parliament unashamedly. There was the case of that man with 2 of his wives, I believe. And he is there proudly showing how his 2 wives are in the house with him. Who is going to take those decisions? Is it his wives or himself? Because he is the head of the family. And the fact that as a polygamous man, he didn't feel any shame in coming to parliament to say his 2 wives are there with him. Do you think when we are talking of women's rights, he's going to be particularly concerned about passing the best laws to safeguard women? I don't think so.
So more women
It's to his advantage to ensure that they remain subservient to him. So
that's another
when you
area.
have women who are educated, who understand what women's rights are all about, talking about equal opportunities. We are not saying we should put men in the position that women were in before to invert it and now women are on top. That's not what we're saying. We're saying we want equal rights and opportunities. It's not difficult. It's just a matter of looking at me and thinking to yourself, oh, okay, she's female. She just happens to be a female. But first and foremost, she's a human being. And so she's entitled to the same rights, the same opportunities, the same respect as a man should have. But if you want to say something in any public forum, and you as a woman, you open your mouth to speak, you're shut down because a man has to speak first.
The thing is, we need to address all of these issues and raise and recognize
we need to address all of these issues.
Equal dignity.
We need to put resources to ensure that women's rights are
upheld,
promoted, and upheld. It's not just a question of saying it, but it has to be
as human rights.
Yes.
But I don't want to leave without showing some of the work that Mr. Hanya has done. So that's why I was trying to okay, let's go see some of Mr. Hanya's work, and then we'll round up with your last statements from both of you. So Mr. Hanya, before we come back to you, let me quickly see a bit of your work so that others can get to see the pictures. So, Mr. Jamilu, Mr. Jamilu is the head of the Referral Center. So, are you a nurse?
Yes, I am.
You see, and very rarely do you find male nurses. Do you find that unusual? People assume that once you are a man, you can't be a nurse. Do you find people staring at you and saying when you say you're a nurse?
I think what we feel is what a woman can do, we can also do.
Yeah, I
also want to share what to share. I think equal right here, where if a woman can be a man can.
Okay, fair enough. So as we've discussed, clearly you also see how people's perceptions can affect things, because traditionally there are more female nurses. Because you are a male nurse, they will look at you that way. Do you think that could also be a problem with the way we view husbands and wives? Traditionally, the man is the head. You say the woman is the neck. But Dr. Esohe says there's no head, there's no neck. We all have head and neck. We are supposed to be equal partners. So I want you to give your final perception about how culture and religion can address the rate of violence within our society. What are the things we need to change and the things we need to make continue to do? 2 minutes.
When it actually comes to issues of gender-based violence, like I said, it's always difficult. Trying to separate this and trying to make amends on issues like this, because in a situation where you are coming from another angle of religion, the other person is coming from another from the angle of culture and all that. Like what I said the other time, take for instance a situation where a girl child in a particular religion is allowed to get married, legal for her to get married at the age of 16. And then the law is saying the age of 16 is not the age of consent, but rather the age of when you are 18, that you are sexual age to get married or to be able to like give in to whatever, to give consent to whatever thing you think is right for you. That's how we are finding it difficult down here. And there is this shared ignorance, like I said, among even our adults. Situation where somebody feels, I can get married to a girl of 15. So if I can get married to a girl of 15, why can't I friend a girl of 15? They come to your center and they begin to tell you that, yes, she's my girlfriend. At 13, she's my girlfriend. And she gave in to this, and that was why it happened. And the belief is no longer real. So you find it difficult. So now in issues like this, I think we still have to go back to the drawing board, where I said, let there be like this thing we are doing now, trying to educate people, to advocate on all these things, to teach them, to involve them, let them understand. Some of them is just ignorant. Some of them, that no reason at all. But the truth of the matter is, some of them, these are some of the issues that we have. So I think we will still have to go back to the cultural perspective, religious perspective. We should be able to make some amends. Okay, a girl child, okay, what we are doing down here is, okay, at least let her finish secondary school.
So education.
When she finished secondary school at that stage, yes.
I hear you, Jamilu. You're speaking to the fact that there should be better laws, better education of the girls, especially, and also to have to change our culture, but the laws will work for us. Because I must move on to Dr. Esohe, and I have just 2 minutes to go. How do we address this problem?
Thank you. The question of, I just want to quickly say that patriarchy is bad, not just for women, but also for men. So we have to keep that in mind. But at the same time, we need to work on implementing some of the United Nations SDGs, the development goals that Nigeria signed up to. SDG 5 talks about gender equality. And so I agree that the question of education, the question of opportunities, the question of providing. The other day, someone was happy that there is this quota for women in parliament of, I think, 30% or even less, and they were rejoicing. And I found that insulting. They had to create more seats, and that is expanding the National Assembly that's already top heavy in order to provide some spaces for women. That is not the way it should go. What should be happening is that they should ensure that women have that opportunity to be there. The women should be given that opportunity to be there and not being shut out and not allowed. I remember some political parties that removed women who were going to be speakers so that the male colleague can be there because he's male. And that is part of the problem. So we need to educate.
Speaking to our perception of women, women should be seen as equals, not as properties.
Exactly. That is one of the cultural issues we need to address, to understand that women are humans. Women are equal to men, and our youth should be trained from childhood, both male and female, to see that women need not be submissive because they are women, and men need not be
Superior.
patriarchal because they are men, or think of themselves as being superior because they are men. So these are
So
the
I
issues,
want,
and of course, the resources that are needed to ensure that those opportunities are given to women.
so I want you both to just quickly, in 30 seconds, tell me what you think each person should do to establish the fact they are with her, because our hashtag is I Dare With Her. I Dare With Her means I support every young child and woman out there to protect her against any form of violence. So what should each person be doing? Very quickly, I'll start with you, Jamilu. What is the pledge that everybody should take to deal with her?
My own side, I think what you should do is you should always believe her
Believe
whenever
her.
she comes. Yes, believe her, and whenever she comes with a problem, listen to her and don't judge her.
Thank you very much. Dr. Esohe, what's your own pledge? What should everybody's pledge be?
The pledge is whenever you see cases of violence against women, you need to support the woman, you need to believe her, you need to ensure that she gets justice.
Every single person. I want to thank both of you for coming. And I know that even if we spend 2 hours, Dr. Esohe, who's passionate about women, would keep talking. And I can see that, Jamilu, you have shared with us your experience in that side. And the patriarchy that Dr. Esohe said also affects you when they say in the world, men should not be nurses. You know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that she's saying.
Exactly.
And I want to thank everybody who's watched. And like I said, we're going to make a full documentary of this someday. And it's right there on our YouTube channel, and you can watch. The whole idea is to throw a spotlight at the initiative of Spotlight Initiative to help people to realize at the end of the day, we almost dare with her. Thank you for being here, and see you again.